Hello, I'm Glenn W. Hunter with TIPS IE, stands for Trauma Informed Prevention Services of the Inland Empire. And with me is Joyce Clarke, a 20-year freelance grant writer specializing in education and the arts. She is also a researcher in this space, currently monitoring trends and changes in California regarding COVID-19. And we're going to be visiting with you, really talking about what's going on in the education world, also what's going on particularly in the entertainment world and how it applies to, well, the impact COVID-19 is having on our economy. Joyce, welcome.
Thank you, Glenn. Nice to see you one more time.
Pleasure is indeed mine. Let's just jump right into it. Our last podcast, we took a look at reentry and how it would impact the economic and mental wellness of the education, health, and employment sectors. Today, our discussion focuses primarily on the entertainment industry. Joyce, why the interest in this sector?
I have been in some form of the arts and the entertainment industry all my life, mainly because I am an alumnus of Emerson College in Boston. It's a well-known school for communications and all forms of the arts, especially TV and film, in front of and behind the camera. Plus, when I went back home to New York after college, I worked for an art magazine, for the Radio Trade Association in New York. Then, after moving to Los Angeles, I worked for an R&B music management company and for a radio syndication music content company. On the side, like everyone else in LA, I wrote music with a singer friend and did some other creative things. Currently, I am an active member of Emerson's Ebony Alumni Association, whose membership is really replete with working industry people. So I hear their stories about the ups and downs of the industry. Also, as you introduced me and said I'm a grant writer for nonprofits, and my specialty is clients whose mission is education, the arts, or arts education in some form.
So to get this dialogue started, what does reentry look like in the entertainment industry today?
As you know, the entertainment industry is really a global industry. In the US, major productions take place in New York, California, and with the Tyler Perry studios blossoming and going over the top in Atlanta. But just looking at California and what the governor's industry task force is dealing with to stay compliant with health guidelines is daunting. That's really what it looks like right now. Governor Newsom had his third industry roundtable on May 20th with a different group of people representing unions, production, and actors. The summary conclusion is that the industry is a fluid industry, meaning how you keep people safe on a game show or a talk show is really going to be very different than how you can practice social distancing on an ensemble TV location, a TV series on location.
So what major points came out of that third roundtable on May 20th?
Number one, when can production resume? Number two, safety guidelines will have to be fluid. Number three, adapting new workplace protocols right now while we're down with COVID-19 and into the future. Number four, the huge impact on labor. Number five, increased costs all around. The Governor Newsom's Film and Television Digital Roundtable is on YouTube for any of your listeners and viewers who would like to look at either the third roundtable that we're talking about now or the second or the first one. They can go right to YouTube.
You know, especially considering TIPS IE and their tentacles into the labor component of the economy in the IE and beyond, this is absolutely essential. You know, so let's look at some of them in detail. from the entertainment perspective again, when can production in California resume?
That's another one of those God questions you asked me last week. No one knows for sure. The severity of this virus is in the driver's seat. Guidelines continue to be worked on. This task force was formed several weeks ago, and in real time, they're working on it. There is production, however, going on now, not in the United States, though. On this panel, the Netflix chief content officer, he said that Sweden, Ireland, and South Korea, to name a few, they've worked out their guidelines based on their environment. So they have resumed on some scale. And keep in mind that Europe and the other countries are pretty much through their virus, their peaks. So they are now able to resume production on a smaller scale.
You know, you brought up one curious point in that piece that you just illuminated. What do you mean by inferring that the safety guidelines will be fluid?
There will be some common prevention practices in the guidelines, same things we're doing now as individuals. And these are ordered by the public health officer, like distancing, masks, heightened and frequent hygiene practices, training on COVID-19 symptoms. But the guidelines are going to have to be fluid or different based on the type of production and its environment. Is it on location? Is it in a studio? On the street? Where is this production happening?
Wow. You know, will this cause some anxiety overall?
To a degree, yes. Even with the task force working nonstop to forecast every eventuality, it won't be until these guidelines are put to the test in real time will they see what works and what doesn't. That's where anxiety comes in. Actors or crew who automatically greet each other with a hug or a touch will be reminded no touching.
Hmm. So you said adapting new workplace protocols now and then into the future is going to be a little bit problematic. Was this a consensus from the task force?
Yeah, this statement came from the African American award winning director Ava DuVernay. She, like many others, are working with their crew remotely as much as is feasible. You know, I'm going to guess that it brought her to the realization that in some instances, technology can support a rethinking of the process from production to the viewer, to what we see for efficiency and productivity.
Well, was there a response from some of the other panelists on the call?
Someone brought up the LA film permit process, that it has to be modified and fast tracked to jumpstart production again, and production translates into jobs. At the end of this roundtable, businessman Tom Steyer, he summed up the key points, naming one of them accelerated changes in the industry as something to consider. So the governor was listening, and the other panelists were listening to what Ava DuVernay was saying.
Indeed. You know, we've looked at it from the intangible. Now, what about the tangible? Meaning people, labor. You know, will we see mass layoffs from primary to ancillary businesses that depend on TV and film production, you know, for their livelihood?
No question. No question. The union rep Dan, who was on the call on the roundtable, he said, with the immediate shutdown of the state, 150,000 union workers were jettisoned into unemployment. Crew and an untold number of actors, from the stars of a show to the supporting actors, who I coin as 20 feet from stardom, have been thrown out of work. According to John, who's a producer actor on a series, he said many of the bit part working actors have side gigs and work paycheck to paycheck in this industry. So they heavily rely on productions.
In this particular dialogue, was there mention of mental wellness after John shared this information?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Stacy is a production stylist, and she spoke about her and her crew having to gather up their department in hours. And as a stylist doing hair and makeup, that's a lot of equipment spread all over. And rather than the week that it takes them to clean up after production, just hours to gather this up. She has children at home, and she first found it overwhelming to her mental health, she said, to be thrust into cook, teacher, housekeeper, manager, I can imagine entertainer, all at once, while she's still worried about her crew and their well-being. Stacy said anecdotally that she had to virtually coach a person through a haircut. And I can imagine she was on Zoom doing this. But nonetheless, she's also busy putting together protocols for safety and increased hygiene measures for when her team returns to work. The question is, how do you safely apply someone's makeup from 6 feet away and you both have on masks?
Yeah.
It's tongue in cheek, but it's a real scenario that has to be mitigated and navigated. It's a concern. And then she concluded by saying that the industry is normally a stressed environment, but it's good stress. So she has learned over these weeks to redirect that stress of multitasking at home.
So what about the actors?
It's just not a good picture. And for the supporting actors or big player actors, they are more than stressed. They don't know if and when there will be a next job for them anytime soon. I have a friend who's an editor. She took some of her work home with her. She was able to do that. She had most of the equipment that's needed for editing, but she just shared with me that her network is starting layoffs, and that's scary for everyone. And for the actors, these are the actors who wait tables, who work in hotels, or Lyft drivers, probably work at Starbucks, and do that until their next acting job comes along. And all of that side work dried up at one time as well. For some, all they have right now is unemployment. Their stress is more than exacerbated by this virus, which to me is a whirling tornado sucking up victims, making no pit stops.
Hmm. You mentioned increased costs all around. Please explain. Go a little deeper with that.
First, they have to come into compliance with the public health officer and CDC. Someone is going to have to foot the bill to offset the labor and equipment changes required to resume production in California. To be sure, Glenn, New York, Atlanta, and overseas will also incur new unbudgeted costs. Remember, productions were in session when they had to shut down. They did not budget for these extra costs they're going to incur as we move into re-entry and they resume production. And productions are really a controlled environment with security on the set, location permits obtained. So they may be in a closed environment, they may be in somebody's residential area, street closures, trailers. The union has hired an epidemiologist to look over their protocols for safety of the crew and others who must work in close proximity to each other. So someone has to pay for safety. Clearly, this is just one more thing for production companies to worry about so as not to have any cost overruns or have to shut down production because of someone testing positive for COVID-19.
So, do you have any information on the ancillary businesses that are being affected by production closures and how they will look on reentry?
So many franchise and independent businesses that rely on production, the movie industry as a whole, have been affected and are suffering economic loss right now. I'll just give you a quick bird's eye view of the movie theater industry in this situation. The first thing is the major chains, like any retailer, lost billions, and some are owned by overseas companies. So we're looking at global billions. And one of them, I understand, I think it's AMC, is filing for bankruptcy, but don't quote me on that one. Another thing, you find your theaters in the malls. And in California, malls opened this past weekend, but there was reported only about 15 to 25% foot traffic. And that probably included movie theaters. Another thing, on reopening, theaters are required to include social distancing, meaning for some, half their normal seating capacity is closed off. That's probably translating into higher ticket prices. Another thing, social isolation started 3 movies being released on streaming platforms. Others have held off releasing in theaters until much later, until we get back to that new normal. So I kind of say tongue in cheek, the movie tagline is no longer coming to a theater near you, but coming soon to a living room near you. Another thing is their money is really made at the food and beverage counter. I know that this impact has really been huge for theaters. And I think the last thing and the most important thing is, I guess, the layoffs of labor is really going to burgeon well into the thousands. Think about summer when the kids are on vacation and school breaks, when young people are usually hired to work in theaters. That's not going to happen. That's going to change. So the theaters have really taken a major, major hit.
Joyce, that is a lot to get your hands around. You know, you consider that the entertainment industry, the movie industry, such a large part of California culture and quite frankly, California's economy. And as you think about how this hits, not just for the big stars and the producers and the production component, but when you start thinking about what this means for the young people who are starting their careers or getting startup jobs in theaters, this impacts them because those jobs aren't available. And it also results in underemployment for others who are now absorbing those jobs.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very curious time economically and socially for California.
You're right on all points. I can see our unemployment not only increasing, but for the next year or two, maybe 2.5, the unemployment rate is still going to be huge. 24%, 35%. I don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody knows the impact until after this virus is over and we assess the damage in every sector. But you're right on all points with the industry. They are the driver of the California economy. And will continue to keep a close look on the industry and how they're making out with these guidelines as they try to reopen very, very soon.
Well, on behalf of Trauma Informed Prevention Services of the Inland Empires, TIPS IE, you know, this is something that's relevant to the audience that we serve. And Joyce, I deeply appreciate the fact that you're able to bring such insight to this condition, to this situation, and what this means for California, again, in the aggregate, but Southern California particularly, as we continue to work our way through some of the economic struggles that are going to be a byproduct of COVID-19. So thank you for the insight. Thank you for the clarity.
Thank you. And may I give the TIPS contact information for those who are feeling stressed, who would like to talk to some of our clinicians?
Please do.
The phone number is 951-282-7173. Again, 951-282-7173. The email, tips, T-I-P-S, dot inland empire, C-A-L, at gmail.com. Tips dot inland empire, at gmail.com. And thank you again, Glenn, for having me on your podcast this week.
Again, the pleasure is mine. And again, for those of you who have learned and benefited from this, please share, like the podcast, subscribe, but more importantly, share, because we are trying to bring this information broadly because it will impact California going forward. Finally, in this environment, we can't say it enough. Be safe. Thank you again.